They've set up a process in each court to accept complaints, to resolve disputes with employees, and to do more training, things like that. But the number of complaints about abusive behavior is really low, sometimes in the single digits. And there are real questions about whether those systems really protect people who work in the courts and who want to remain anonymous.
Yeah. Well, Tom, your reporting focused on financial disclosures, right? And in particular, disclosures surrounding a certain type of legal seminar?
Yeah, so every year a bunch of different groups like bar associations, nonprofits, law schools, they host what they call judicial education events. And one of the biggest hosts over the decades for these events is George Mason University, which has a conservative leaning law school. It's based in Virginia. They put together these week-long seminars for judges on a bunch of legal topics, and they often take place at luxury resorts, 5-star hotels. We're talking places like Palm Beach, Florida, around Aspen, Colorado, Alaska, even London, and judges get free rooms, free meals, and free money towards those travel expenses. And the events can be pretty ideologically slanted. We found that judges have heard a presentation from a far-right German politician, along with corporate CEOs, members of an advocacy group that uses lawsuits to challenge environmental law. Now, the federal courts have recognized that the combination of luxury and ideology can be a bit of a bad look. And so they've had a set of disclosure requirements. And I talked to Gabe Roth, he's from the watchdog group Fix the Court, about why these disclosures are really important.
The public has a right to know whether or not its top legal officials have any potential conflicts going into hearing cases of, sometimes they're small bore, but a lot of the times they have major national impact.
And the main thing we wanted to find out was, well, how well are these judges meeting those requirements for disclosure? Because George Mason is a public university in Virginia, we were able to file Freedom of Information Act requests, FOIAs, to get lists of what judges were attending. And then we compared that with what the judges publicly disclosed.
And what did you find out?
Well, we found about 40 judges did not disclose going to these luxury events within 30 days as they're required to. Another dozen or so failed to include the thousands of dollars in free perks they got on their annual financial disclosures. Those are due at the end of the year. And in some cases, we could not check at all because the judiciary has failed to get financial disclosures posted online. They've got a lot of backlogs. In some cases, there are security concerns. And these issues affected judges really across the spectrum, liberals, conservatives, and some big names. Among those names are Judge Eileen Cannon. People might know that name because she is currently presiding over former President Trump's classified documents case in Florida. Cannon went to 2 of these events at a resort near Yellowstone National Park and failed to file her disclosure within 30 days. The court where she works told me it was because of a technical issue on their website, and they uploaded it after I asked about it. And then there's the judge actually in charge of implementing judiciary policy, Robert Conrad. He's the director of the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts. He also attended these events, had multiple missing disclosures.
Interesting.
And I should say, there's no indication that judges intentionally withheld this information. I spoke to a number of judges and clerks, and they, by and large, expressed embarrassment and said this was all an oversight.
Well, it sounds like your reporting identified some important gaps here, like both in terms of protections for people who work in the courts and the financial reports for these judges. And I'm curious, Carrie, what are you looking for next here?
Members of Congress have already introduced a bill that would create an inspector general that's a kind of watchdog for federal judges, and they're also drafting now that might give law clerks and other people who work for the federal court some legal protection. I'm also watching for a couple of independent reports due to come out later this summer, in particular one from the Government Accountability Office. They've been looking at the procedures the courts imposed after the Me Too movement, whether those are really working, and how the courts collect data about complaints. There have been some hints also that the judiciary has not been completely forthcoming with these outside auditors, but the court system told me in a statement that they're actively collaborating with these reviews.
And I would add, as Carrie has found with these workplace issues, a lot of the problem experts identified with disclosure comes down to judges policing other judges or themselves. You know, there are requirements for disclosure, but in some cases there's no clear enforcement mechanism, and the penalties for non-disclosure appear to be pretty weak. Experts say to fix the problem, Congress would have to step in and make disclosure a priority and add some teeth and real penalties for failing to follow the requirements.
That is NPR investigative correspondent Tom Dreisbach and Justice correspondent Carrie Johnson. Thank you to both of you.
Thanks, Elsa.
Thank you.
You're
listening to All Things